Let's welcome in our next guest. Anil Magnani is now joining us on the phone line. Anil, what's the sense that you get for the markets? Do you think that yesterday's move was largely a one-off and the uptrend in the Nifty would continue?
I still think early days. For me, I think, yes, 9200 to 93, a couple of major expansions are coming in that range, so not surprised the market did pause over there. I'd watch about 8975. The reason I say that is 8975 was the high on the Friday before the UP election results. So there's a gap created at that price above 8975, and we opened at about 9090. I think if we start going below the gap, then I think that's the first sign that the effect of the election gap up is over. So I'll keep that as the first level to watch out for, 8975. If we break below that, then I think somewhere around 8800 is the 50-day, the 10-week averages. So that would be the major support. So for now, I'd say as long as you're above 8975, you still have the potential to go back and retest that 9200 high. If you do break below 8975, then you have opened up a slightly more downside. But right now, probably the market's somewhere in between.
Right, but so the yesterday's fall is a buying opportunity, or closer to 9,000 would you want to buy?
As a trader, I think as an investor anyway, most people are pretty much invested across the board the way the mid-caps have moved. So this will be more like a trading move if you buy, let's say, close to yesterday's low of 9020, then you're keeping like a 50-point stop of 8970.
Right. As far as global markets are concerned, there was a correction yesterday. Do you think again Dow has first time given a correction in really a long time, but still you believe it'll be bought into?
Yeah, I mean, see, ideally, even for a correction, you need, I'm saying in a proper setup, you will need a lower top. So that's not happened in any market so far. All have made new either 52-week highs or life highs and are correcting for the first time. So ideally, I'd like to see a bounce. If it makes a lower top, then we can say that the world markets have not topped out. So right now, it's still a buy on dip. Till I don't see a lower top, I don't think it's worth it calling a high right now. So I'll still wait on that front.
Right. Just as far as dollar index is concerned or dollar is concerned, do you think it's not going to cross 101, 102 very soon?
It is in a corrective phase, no doubt. I think 98 is what I have as a key level. So around the 98, if it holds and starts to bounce back, fair enough. But if it starts to dip below 98, then I think the dollar index is telling us something else. For now, I still think the overall setup suggests enough strength on the upside, but with the caveat of 98 holding in any fall.
So, if you just assume that dollar index is between that range of 98 and the all-time high, do you think that flows would continue, risk on trade would continue?
I'd like to believe there is a little bit of a divergence because the dollar index, if you say, the high was somewhere in January. 6th Jan was when it hit 103.80. Subsequently, even though it has been dipping, the S&P continued to make a new high right up to March first week. So even though the dollar index didn't move up for 2 months, actually corrected, the S&P went and made a new high. So I think little bit of the correlation is out. Ideally, you would have thought then even the S&P should have stopped out in Jan, but that's not happening. So I think there is a little bit of a non-correlation trade. I mean, if it was that clear, then oil coming off from 54 to 47, even in an environment that the dollar index has fallen, is also another strange one. So a lot of the commodities I read yesterday, rubber is off. So it's interesting that the commodities actually rallied with the dollar, leaving aside gold and silver, which directly work as a hedge against the weakness in the dollar. But other commodities are interesting. They've actually come off with the dollar and they're moving up with the dollar. So there is some difference of what you normally expect when you relate commodities also to the dollar, and there is some sort of, I wouldn't say decorrelation, but there is some sort of time-wise non-correlation between S&P and dollar right now.
Right, and what would that mean for commodity markets?
I mean, it's a tough one because remember, at the end of the day, commodities also have gone up. I mean, most of them were at 8-year highs or 9-year highs. So I think it's pretty much if there is a profit-taking trade, whether it's in the dollar, it'll also seems like it's going to happen in the industrial commodities. It's not going to be the commodities move independent of the dollar. Except, like I said, gold and silver tends to move inverse to the dollar. But I feel if the markets come off with the dollar, then even commodities will come off.
Right. What will be your call on Reliance Industries now? It has had a fair amount of correction since the time we last spoke. Do you think it's a buying opportunity?
I think Reliance is a different sort of trade. It broke out of 8 years or 9 years of doing nothing. So it's completely moving, in a different zone from the market. Maybe a little deeper fall can possible. But yes, there is the first level right at the 20-day, which is at 1242, which is almost what it did yesterday. But suppose there was a deeper correction in Reliance, maybe even up to 1185, which is the 10-week. I still think it's a buy on every dip now. It's completely broken out of a long-term consolidation. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be tricky. So you buy at 1240 also, you buy at 1185 also.
Right, but you could just tell us that if any trader is wanting to trade Reliance on the buy side, now that it has had a rally, what should be the ideal level where one should get in, or what should be a strict stop loss if somebody is getting in right now?
If you're lucky, I think 1185 would be the best option. If you get there, there is another question. But I think that will be the perfect entry for Reliance right now.
Right. What will be your call on Vedanta Limited? It's up 1.3%. We've had a surprise dividend from Hindustan Zinc. Do you think the uptrend in Vedanta, Hindustan Zinc, some of these commodity names will continue?
My guess is they're due for a correction. I mean, remember, Vedanta was a 60 rupee stock in February last year. So you're talking about in a year, it's gone up more than 4x. I would stick my neck out and say at this point I will not buy. Maybe a long-term investor may argue that he still wants to be invested in the stock, fair enough. But I think somebody coming in now, I think will be a little more, the risk-reward doesn't fit. I'm more waiting for a correction. Ideally, first about 239, 240. But in a bigger correction, I think it will be more attractive, having gone up 4 times. So I would say more closer to 210. Again, it's far away. But if you're an investor and you're already in it, fine. But if you're not in it, then I don't think this is the right price to buy. I'd rather wait for a correction.
Right. Also, can you just talk to us about Reliance Capital? So it's just trading around that 610 for really a long time. Now that Reliance has given a breakout, do you expect ADAG stocks also to follow? Let's start with Reliance Capital, 610. It's at a high right now.
Well, I don't think there's any correlation between Reliance Industry and the ADAG. The ADAG tends to move on its own and as a group. I don't think it's got anything to do with Reliance. But having said that, I think there is enough in the chart to suggest that after a long time, there is a little more positivity in these stocks, and they're sort of given out proper breakouts. It is at a 52-week high, maybe even like a 5-year high or something, I'm not sure. But having already gone up from 407 all the way to 610, it may have done a lot of the initial move. Only what it tells me now, it is setting up for a much better move going forward. Maybe there are dips, but in the past I would have said this is a stock to sell on rally. I think now it's completely changed its stature from a sell or rally to buy on every dip.
Right. So what should be a level to buy, get into Reliance Capital? Is current level also good enough, or wait for any bad day because it's a very high beta name, so it will tend to correct with the market?
I think so. I mean, although I don't want to say the stock is weak or anything because it's very strong. So maybe if you're buying, just buy 20-30% to start off with. But on a weekday, maybe back to the 550s, it will make for a fantastic buy.
Anil, if you could just tell me about Shobha Developers Limited. If you track the cash market name, it's a stock which is up almost 50% in the last 3 months.
Again, I think there's a lot of expectation. Again, I don't want to get into the fundamentals, but seems to be a lot of expectation from the government as far as property stocks go. But purely looking at its structure, I think it's probably done its course. And sure, who's to know, it cannot stretch. But I still think having moved from 216 all the way to 350, it's now sitting at a major 50-month average. So ideally I would stick out my neck and say, wait here. The setup doesn't suggest to buy, but the next dip probably makes more. I know I keep saying buy the dip, but I just feel in this stock it's run up too much. For me, the alignment is very important. So 50-week average is still way below the 200-week. The 10 and 20-month averages are much below the 50-month. So I still think this could develop into a longer-term trade, but right now maybe it's run its course.
Right. Anil, I know that you don't have data for Avenue Supermarkets. It's just 2 to 3 days of listing. But, you could just tell us that what does that listing tell you in terms of market, the underlying trend for the market?
Well, obviously, risk appetite is there. Liquidity is there. Stock opens double, then sells off, but then comes back to close at the highest point of the day. Tells you there is a lot of risk appetite. Liquidity is high. Remember, FIIs had actually stayed away from the market till right up to the UP elections results. So they have just come in at 9,100. And with the amount of money that the banks have been flushed with from demonetization, all that money also seems to be going into mutual funds. So liquidity is there. Tough to call highs and lows. There is that. I don't want to put the curse on the market, but generally when we had a big IPO, this is not a big size IPO, let's remember that. But we've had big IPOs like RPL and all. They have sucked out a lot of liquidity from the market, and then the markets have topped out. But I don't think that's this scenario at all, purely because the size of this issue was nothing compared to some of those,
Right. Also, a word on rupee, the strength that it has shown versus global currencies?
I think the longer-term setup tells me that eventually, it could be a few months down the road, maybe even next year, I don't know, we are headed to 62-63 range. But I think for now, I'd like to believe 65 may hold, and it bounces back to about 66, 67, maybe 66, 50, 66, 70. But over the next year, the way it's set up, I think eventually it's headed towards between 62 and 63.
Right. Anil, thank you so much for taking out time for us and telling us what's your view on the market is. That was a technical view on the Nifty.